Your heart. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Krishna, Krishna,
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisance as always, Shri Prabhupada. Welcome devotees to morning Bhagavatam class on this very auspicious day of the disappearance of Shri Prabhupada. This morning, as I was starting the class, I was thinking how fortunate we are that we are actually discussing Srimad Bhagavatam, the books that Shri Prabhupada translated on his disappearance day. Such a blessing, that we have bestowed upon us. We will be discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 18, verse 17. And the chapter is entitled The Maharaj Cursed by the Brahmin Boy. And we have Pariksit Prabhu covering for, actually they switched with him and Chandramali Swami. And we're in the part of the discussion where the sages are asking Sukadev Goswami, Susuta Goswami about the glories of the Lord. They want to hear, they want to hear, they want to hear. So as much as now we are in that same position with the sages, we want to hear, we want to hear. So without further delay, we'll start the class. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopijan Vallabha Girivadhari. Gopijan Vallabha Girivadhari. Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadhari. Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Shri Ravanachari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Jaya Nitai Gora Chandra, Nitai Gora Chandra, Gora Hari. Jaya Nitai Gora Chandra, Nitai Gora Chandra, Gora Hari. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Guru Dev, Guru Dev, Guru Dev, Jaya Jaya Guru Dev, Jai Gora Haribo, 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 Jai Gora Haribo. Jayom Vishnupad Paramhansa Parivajikacharya. Astottara Satashishimaris Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayom Vishnupad Paramhansa Parivajikacharya. Astottara Satashishimaris Divine Grace Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद से द्वैत गदाधर शिवाचार्य गौर भक्तवृंद की जाय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जाय। वृंदावन धाम की जाय, मथुरा धाम की जाय, नवद्वीप धाम की जाय, जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जाय, गंगा माई की जाय, जमुना माई की जाय, तुलसी देवी की जाय, भक्ति देवी की जाय, सामवेद भक्तवृंद की जाय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। हरि हरि बोल। All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Krishna Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tira Swami Nitinani. Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada. Shri Gaur Karana Shakti Bhakti. Narayana Namaskritya Narunchevam Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Nashta Prayesu Abhadresu Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya Bhagavatamastloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, going the devotees, set the humble obeisances, please. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So this morning we'll continue with Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 18, and Text 17, and we will go to Text 18, by the way, 17 and 18 today. So we'll chant the text for text, the shloka for text 17, and then you can repeat if you so desire. Tanna param punyam asam, tanna param punyam asavitatam, akyanam adhyabhuta yuganistam, akyayananta charito papanam, parikshitam bhagavata viramam. Tanna param punyam asamritarham, akyanam atyadbhuta yoganishtam, akyanyananta charito papanam, parikshitam bhagavata viramam. Tanna param punyam asamritatam akyanam atya bhuta yuganishtam akyahyananta charito papanam parikshitam bhagavata viramam. Hare Krishna.
I'm going to chant because Mother Geeta can't turn her audio on. She just told me. Dana param punyama samritam tartam akhyana matya bhuta yogi nishtam akhyayanam to charito papandam parikshitam bhagavata bhiramam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Tanna param punyamasamvrtartham आख्यानमत्यवद्भुत योगनिष्ठम् आख्याहि अनन्तचरितोपपन्नम् परीक्षितं भागवत अभिरामम्.
Okay. Anyone else?
तन्नं परं पुण्यमसंवृतार्थम् आख्यानम् आख्याद्भूतयोगनिष्ठम् आख्याननन्ताचरितोपपन्नं पारीक्षितं भागवताभिरामम्.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Anyone else? All right, we'll do word for word now. Tad, therefore, now unto us, Param supreme, Punyam purifying, Asam Retatam, as it is, Akyanam narration, Ati very, Adbhuta wonderful, Yoganishtam compact in Bhakti Yoga, Akyahi described, Ananta the unlimited, Acharita activities, Upapanam full of, Parikshitam spoken to Maharaj Pariksit, Bhagavata of the pure devotees, Aviramam particularly very dear. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Thus, please narrate to us the narrations of the unlimited, for they are purifying and supreme. They were spoken to Maharaj Pariksit, and they are very dear to the pure devotees, being full of Bhakti Yoga. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. What was spoken to Maharaj Pariksit and what is very dear to the pure devotees is Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam is mainly full of the narrations of the activities of the Supreme Unlimited, and therefore it is the science of Bhakti Yoga or the devotional service of the Lord. Thus, it is para or supreme, because although it is enriched with all knowledge and religion, it is specifically enriched with the devotional service of the Lord. Text 18. Let's go to text 18. Thank you. Sutta vacham ahovayam janma bitodya hasma vidanu vitapi viloma jata kashkulyam adim vinoti sigram mahatamanam abhidhana yoga. Word for word. Sutta vacha. Sutta Goswami said, Aho, how, Vayam, we, Janma Brita, promoted in birth, Adhya, today, Ha, clearly, Asma, have become, Veda Anuvritya, by serving those who are advanced in knowledge. Api, although, below Majata, born in a mixed caste. Dashkulam, disqualification of birth. Adhim, sufferings. Vidinoti, purifies. Shigram, very soon. Mahatamanam, of those who are great. Abhidhana, conversation, yoga, connection. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Sri Shuta Goswami said, "O God, although we are born in a mixed caste, we are still promoted in birthright simply by serving and following the great who are advanced in knowledge. Even by conversing with such great souls, one can without delay cleanse oneself of all disqualifications resulting from lower births." Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Shuta Goswami did not take his birth in a Brahmana family. He was born in a family of mixed caste, or an uncultured low family. But because of higher association, like Sri Shukadev Goswami and the great rishis of Naimisharanya, certainly the disqualification of inferior birth was washed off. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu followed this principle in pursuance of the Vedic usages, and by his transcendental association, he elevated many low-born, or those disqualified by birth or action, to the status of devotional service, and established them in the position of acharyas, or authorities. He clearly stated that any man, whatever he may be, whether a Brahmin or Shudra by birth, or a householder or mendicant in the order of society, if he is conversant with the science of Krishna, he can be accepted as an acharya or guru, a spiritual master. Shuta Goswami learned the science of Krishna from great rishis and authorities like Shukadev and Vyasadeva, and he was so qualified that even the sages of Naimisharanya eagerly wanted to hear from him the science of Krishna in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. So he had a double association of great souls by hearing and preaching transcendental science, or the science of Krishna. What? So he had the double association of great souls by hearing and preaching transcendental science, or the science of Krishna, has to be learned from the authorities. And when one preaches the science, he becomes still more qualified. So Shuta Goswami had both the advantages, and thus, undoubtedly, he was completely freed from all disqualifications of low birth and mental agonies. This verse definitely proves that Srila Shukadev Goswami did not refuse to teach Shuta Goswami about the transcendental science, nor did the sages of Naimisharanya refuse to hear lessons from him because of his inferior birth. This means that thousands of years ago, there was no bar to learning or preaching the transcendental science because of inferior birth. The rigidity of the so-called caste system in India became prominent within only 100 years or so, when the number of Dvijabandhus, or disqualified men in the families of high castes, increased. Lord Sri Chaitanya revived the original Vedic system, and he elevated Thakur Haridas to the position of Namacharya, or the authority in preaching the glories of the holy name of our Lord. Although His Holiness Srila Haridas Thakur was pleased to appear in a family of Mohammedans. Such is the power of pure devotees of the Lord. The Ganges water is accepted as pure, and one can become purified after taking a bath in the waters of the Ganges. But as far as the great devotees of the Lord are concerned, they can purify a degraded soul even by being seen by the lowborn, what to speak of association. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to purify the whole atmosphere of the polluted world by sending qualified preachers all over the world. And it remains with the Indians to take up this task scientifically and thus do the best kind of humanitarian work. The mental diseases of the present generation are more acute than bodily diseases. It is quite fit and proper to take up the preaching of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world without delay. Mahatamanam Abhidhana also means dictionary of great devotees, or a book full of the words of great devotees. Such a dictionary of the words of great devotees and those of the Lord are in the Vedas and allied literatures, specifically Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Gyanati Mirandasya Gyana Gyana Shalakaya Chakshu Om Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karayam Kanamayam Dhanati Swaha Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaisnavamscha Shri Rupa Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Pitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sachitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Kopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Panchakapatarubhescha Kripasunive Eva Chapatitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Dvaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Peshnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirveshesha Sunyavadi Paschathyadi Sitarini Mo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Guyati Namaha Ananda Lilamaya Vigrahaya Himavi Rivacha Vishnuraya Tasmi Mahaprema Raspadaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Hare Krishna. So in the text before, text 17, the sages and Naimisharanya are appealing to Shuta Goswami, who was present when Srimad Bhagavatam was being spoken to Maharaj Pariksit on the banks of the Ganges. Maharaj Pariksit had 7 days to live, being cursed by a young Brahmin boy to show off to his friends what his powers were like. Obviously, abuse of power in that sense from a material standpoint. But still, from all of this, Maharaj Pariksit looked at it from a transcendental level, and he stopped material activities of administration. And now Srimad Bhagavatam had been spoken to him to the hearing of other sages and demigods who were also present. They had come from different planets to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. That goes to show the importance of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the sages and Naimisharanya are saying, O Sutta Goswami, you have heard this from the lips of Shukadeva Goswami. And Shukadeva Goswami speaking about Srimad Bhagavatam sweetens Srimad Bhagavatam also. The parrot, Shuka, as Srila Prabhupada explains to us, when he takes a bite of a fruit, it sweetens the fruit. Now, scientists may struggle with how that happens, but they will also struggle with how the moon is able to make fruit so or have their distinct aroma and so on. The science is well behind Srimad Bhagavatam, well behind, far behind, as a matter of fact. So the sages in Naimisharanya, 80,000 of them, they want to hear the narrations of Krishna because they are purifying and supreme. And Lord Chaitanya also showed that the part of Krishna Prema that lets a devotee hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and every time they hear the same thing over, it gives them even more joy, more bliss to hear. It's been explained here that narrations about Krishna are purifying. And if you listen to Krishna consciousness recording, Srila Prabhupada's recording, Srila Prabhupada's disciples' recordings, every time you hear it, you see that it affects your mind and heart. You come off with it learning something that is very, very useful for life. And every time, even the same thing is spoken, the same pastime is narrated, it gives extra joy. Because the soul is transcendental, the soul is spiritual, and it wants to hear. The soul has senses. So what's spoken gets to the soul. And when the soul is enlivened, then we feel enlivened too. So as the sages are telling Shita Goswami, they were spoken to Maharaj Pariksit, the narrations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they are very dear to pure devotees. Why? Because pure devotees always want to hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pure devotees' sight of anything that they see in the spiritual world or especially in the material world, when they're in the material world, anything they see reminds them of Krishna. And it is, in fact, the case because the Lord as Paramatma is in every single atom. And everything in the material world is made up of atoms. So the Lord is there as Paramatma. And so the pure devotees have that connection and that understanding. And therefore, everything that they see reminds them of Krishna. That is very deep. Half the time, those of us who are conditioned souls don't think that way. Everything comes from Krishna. So the sages are saying, yes, this was spoken to Maharaj Pariksit and you have heard it, so please let us know. So in the purport, the Prabhupada says that what was spoken to Maharaj Pariksit and what is dear to the pure devotees is Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the commentary of the Puranas. It's called Bhagavat Purana. 17,000, oh sorry, 18, not 17, 18,000 texts in Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavat Purana. There are other Puranas too. And the Puranas together, the texts are 400,000. And of the 400,000 texts, it's like the topmost, the most important that gets to your heart. That is Srimad Bhagavatam, the 18,000 texts. And Srila Prabhupada says it's mainly full of the narrations of the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the activities form that science of Bhakti Yoga, which is the highest yoga. There are other yogas in different ways. Sri Krishna described different yogas: Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga in Bhagavad Gita. But he also says, when we get to chapter 12 of Bhagavad Gita, he talks about Bhakti Yoga. The whole chapter 12 is devoted to Bhakti Yoga. And towards the end of chapter 12, he describes what it is that we do for us to be dear to him. The last 6 texts or so, it ends in text 20. Very, very, very important information. So if you want to know how to be dear to Krishna, start with Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, towards the end. You can go to text 20, which is the end, and reverse back to when everything in the text ends with such person is dear to me. That person is dear to me. That person is dear to me. One of them is that a person who spreads this knowledge, Krishna consciousness, preaches it, that person is dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, you can imagine how dear the pure devotees of the Lord are to him, because they talk about him in Srimad Bhagavatam in great detail. So Srimad Bhagavatam is para, or supreme. It is specifically enriched with the devotional service of the Lord. Yes, there's all knowledge there. Psychology is there, science is there, astrology is there, astronomy is there. In the different chapters, the different places in the material world and how they are arranged, it's all there. There's so much science there. But it always also tells you, the pure devotees that speak about the Lord will tell you the end. The highest of it all is devotional service to the Lord. Therefore, anyone who is performing devotional service is extremely fortunate. Extremely, extremely fortunate. And now it's been made available for all of us in the temples and in our homes. So, as the Prabhupada would say, why don't you take advantage of it? Take advantage of it while you're still in this body, so Krishna will be pleased with you. If I take advantage of it, Krishna is pleased with me, and with all my shortcomings, we'll still get the mercy of the Lord. Now, in the next chapter, the next text 18, Sutta Goswami is talking about himself and how it relates to the mercy of the Lord. Oh God, although we are born in a mixed caste, Sutta Goswami did not take his birth in the pure Brahmin family, like some other pure devotees did. As Srila Prabhupada describes it, he was born in an uncultured low family. But because of his higher association, the association with Shukadev Goswami, the association with Maharaj Pariksit, the association with the sages, the rishis of Naimisharanya, as said, when one associates with a pure devotee, even for a moment, which is translated mathematically as 1/11th of a second, they get so much advantage spiritually. The mind changes. The effect of being around a pure devotee of the Lord is tremendous. I remember sometimes, and of course, many disciples of Srila Prabhupada will tell you, when they met him at the airport, he came, they saw him the first time, those who saw him the first time coming off a plane, an aircraft, he looked very different. He was radiant. Some people were describing it didn't even seem like he was walking. He seemed to be floating. All of that they were talking about. Now, that is the effect of just seeing a pure devotee of the Lord and what it did to them, to their minds. Some of them saw him and immediately they said, that is the person that I'm looking for. I'm looking for a guru. I'm looking for a spiritual advisor. And he seems to have it all. There are devotees who talked about Srila Prabhupada, and it's wonderful to talk about Srila Prabhupada Day because this is his disappearance day. There are devotees who said he came, the Vyasa-san had been arranged for him, he climbed onto it and grabbed his kartals and started playing them. And when he sang, that voice had so much effect on me. It was like a purifying situation. It was strong, and the effect of it coming out, they go, wow, in American language or jargon. So when we are around great souls, we can, in fact, be cleansed so much. I remember one time, and I was just very new to Krishna consciousness, I went to see Bhaktivedanta Swami. At that time, he was preaching at Howard University in Washington, D.C., and his staff announced, the devotees announced that you can go sign up to get a one-on-one conversation with them. So I went, and that was the first time I got, after he asked me where I'd been, he gave me the Science of Self-Realization, a great book to start with. Now, then I went to see him a second time, and I'm trying to put this whole thing together properly. I wasn't in the room. He was in the room. He was coming out of his room. And I realized that he was not alone. And he, in fact, was with Chandamali Swami. So both of them came out. And Maharaj, Bhakti Maharaj, introduced me to Chandamali Swami. And I don't know what happened to me, but I immediately, now here's something very new, so I didn't know any of the etiquette at all. And I found myself going down on my knees immediately, right in front of both of them. I just did it. It just happened automatically. Mm-hmm. So, good soul, sometimes when you see, sannyasi, a pure devotee has arrived in a particular place, if you are fortunate to see a video of it, you see how the devotees react. It is wonderful because they carry the Supreme Personality of Godhead in your hearts. Mm-hmm. So it didn't matter that Sutta Goswami did not take his birth in the Brahmin family. He still was elevated by being around Sri Sukadeva Goswami, the sages of Naimisharanya. And so the inferior birth, as the Papa says, it was washed off. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was elevating so many low-born people by inducing them to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was encouraging, you meet anyone, tell them to chant the holy name of the Lord, preach to them. When you understand something about the science of Krishna and you know it perfectly, you know it well, you can definitely become a Shiksha Guru. You can preach. That way, the person who is hearing also gets so much credit from it. So much would change the heart of that person by hearing about Krishna. And another thing is known in material life, that we can read something and we retain a small percentage of what we read. If we read, if we hear something, we retain even more. If we hear and see a video of it, of something, or some sort of film or video, we remember more. But the ones that we remember the most, the situation where we remember the most, is when we share that information. And so when we talk about Krishna, we will remember more. When we prepare to teach about Krishna, we will remember more of it. Now, that is what science is saying. But we also know that Krishna, as it says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, text 15, he's seated in our hearts. Sabhasya chaham hidi shanivishto. I'm seated in the hearts of all beings. Mata smiti jnanam apohanam cha. For me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So the Lord is already happy with the person who wants to preach, as he says in the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita towards the end. So in that situation, so many things will then be revealed. Sometimes realizations will be revealed to the person that's preaching, and it comes without the person's it's not even part of the preparation, it will still come. And the Lord, as forgetful as we are when it comes to preaching, so many things will be made available. Lord allows us to remember more because from him comes remembrance. So when we are open to serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, especially in the cases where we do a service that's dear to him, all services actually the Lord very much likes. But then he has said some things about connecting with them in the scriptures and preaching about them. If you distribute books, that is also preaching, because you are helping Srila Prabhupada to preach to that person who has taken the book. You will be dear to Krishna in that way. So it is stated here that Srila Goswami had heard and also preached. So that was a double situation in terms of service. Hearing is part of service, and Kirtan, preaching, is also service. Shravan, Kirtan. And Srila Goswami had both the advantages. And so his low birth didn't matter. Any mental agony doesn't matter, especially whatever happens in material life. When we're talking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, material life, material challenges don't seem to matter at all at that time. The heart becomes very, very light and happy. We're talking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the caste systems, Prabhupada was saying about 100 years ago, tried to make people, if you're born in a Brahmin family, then you are a Brahmin. And this was said, put together by Dvijabandhus. The Dvijabandhus themselves are disqualified men. They may have come in a Brahmin family, but they were just saying, oh, you're Brahmin by birth. Then if you're born with Brahmanas, no. The Prabhupada says, no, you can't be like that by birth. It's by studying, it's by associating with the pure devotees of the Lord. And Haridas Thakur, for example, was born in a family of Muslims. But the Lord Chaitanya made him the Acharya for the holy name. And he was chanting 300,000 names of the Lord daily, 192 rounds. Speaking about those of us that chant 16 rounds, he was chanting 192 rounds. And Jagai and Madai, when the Lord purified them after their incident with Lord Nityananda, and Lord Chaitanya came and they apologized, and they decided to stop all of their nefarious, horrible activities. They also started chanting 128 rounds every day. So we are with the opportunity to chant that number of rounds if we want to, but Srila Prabhupada says the minimum should be 16 rounds. So great devotees of the Lord, they can purify even a degraded soul. A degraded soul, by being seen, if a degraded soul speaks or gets the association of a pure devotee, a great devotee of the Lord, that degraded soul can be purified. So indirectly, we're being told, seek the association of great souls. Another point Srila Prabhupada made was that when I heard this years back, before I got a chance to read it, people are getting crazier. As time goes on, people will do things more and more and more crazy. The mental disease of the present generation, they're more acute than bodily diseases. People are going crazy because there's more pressure and there's more anxiety. And therefore, it is really, really best for us to preach Srimad Bhagavatam. That's what will, in fact, combat the mental diseases that people are experiencing. Srila Prabhupada cured a whole lot of people, young people, who were thinking that the alternative was to involve oneself in LSD, drug taking. They didn't realize that the altered consciousness was actually more Maya. But Srila Prabhupada gave them the right thing, and they got away from LSD and other drugs that they were taking. They were cleaned up, and they realized that the elevating Shastra, what is in the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and Chaitanya Charitamrita, would in fact make them feel much happier than what the drugs could give them. Association of a great devotee like Srila Prabhupada made this possible. And therefore, we should, in fact, accept. It's also in Srimad Bhagavatam, speaking about Srimad Bhagavatam itself, Canto 5, Chapter 5, Text 10. Lord Rishabhadeva is speaking to his sons. He says, we should accept the highly elevated Paramhansa, a spiritually advanced spiritual master. That is the pure devotee. And he will teach you how to involve yourself in such a way that our love for Krishna develops. This way, then, we are becoming more and more faithful and loving to the devotees, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the whole Krishna consciousness process becomes very, very dear to us. And we will be ready then to follow everything that the pure devotees of the Lord and Krishna himself in different incarnations in the Srimad Bhagavatam instruct us to do. It is a miserable place where we live now. Even in the high planetary systems, Lord Rishabhadeva says that it's a miserable condition. There is death, there is birth, there's old age, there's disease everywhere. And so the material world is set up like that. It's set up to actually frustrate us. A person that is in the right frame of mind would realize that it is difficult to be in the material world. And therefore, we will be more interested in doing what Krishna wants us to do, and that is prepare to go back to the spiritual world. And Srimad Bhagavatam couldn't be, it's better. Wonderful Vedanta Sutra commentary that tells us so many things that we need to do. Lord Rishabhadeva says we also have to go through any challenges for the sake of devotional service. Whatever challenges come, austerities come, if it's for the sake of serving devotionally, you should definitely do it. And curb the endeavor for sense enjoyment. And replace that with the service to Guru, to devotees, and to the Lord. And finally, listen to discussions about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and associate with devotees. They will always remind us about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We get the opportunity to preach. We get the opportunity to discuss so many things about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual world, and Bhakti Yoga as a whole. And we get to hear all kinds of pastimes about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which are very, very enlivening. And we also get warned, and we also get a chance to talk about what our difficulties are in confidence with other devotees to be able to stay the course and finally go back home. So we got it all made. It's just a question of how we have to apply it. Srila Prabhupada says, take advantage of it. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you so much for a wonderful class. I think this class is really opportune for an auspicious day like today, being Srila Prabhupada's disappearance. So beautiful. In fact, even the purports really matched everything that Prabhupada has done for us and when he was here. So thank you so much for touching some really amazing points on these two verses. Would like to ask devotees if you have any questions, any comments. Mother Geeta has a question here. She said, Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances, all goes to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for the wonderful lecture. Can you please explain soul has senses?
I have a story about that.
Oh, I want to hear that too.
So it happened in Gita Nagari. And this question was a question that I asked to the Bhakti Tirtha Swami. At that time, we were living with them. We didn't have any children, all right, myself, Sri and myself. And it was part of our service. I was using a very rickety, beat-up Volkswagen Rabbit. And we would take Maharaj from his residence to the temple when he was preaching. So I drove him there in the morning, and I remember very well. After finished the preaching the Bhagavatam, and I was taking him back. And this was at the back of my mind. So the senses, well, of course we know our material senses, we use them, so we know that. And so I was wondering, the soul, what about? So I started trying to compose a question to ask Bhakti Maharaj. And in the middle of when he got the idea where I was going with it, then he interrupted. He just said, the soul has the real senses. And that was the answer to my question. The soul has the real senses. Yes, the soul has all senses. The soul can perceive in so many ways. Not only does the soul have senses, but the soul's senses are interchangeable. We hear with our ears, we see with our eyes, but the soul's ear can see if it wants to. Just like the Lord's soul's, senses are interchangeable, we are in quality like the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the soul can be that way. It can have senses. That's why it's so important when we chant that we chant out so that the other living entities whose material senses cannot have what we have, like the trees and whatever other entities, how they communicate. The soul, the mantra is spiritual, so it can get to the soul. The soul benefits from the mantra. Well, the soul benefits from the mantra through the soul's senses. So the soul has senses, and we are having imperfect senses, material senses, to use for this physical body. So when this physical body is actually finished, and the person that's gotten the mercy of the Lord, and now subtle body is gone, physical body is gone, and now the soul expands and meet the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that will be time for the soul's senses to be on full display in terms of how they relate to other souls. So the souls have senses, they can perceive, and they have even better and more acute, accurate, for lack of a better word, senses than the ones that we have here, the imperfect ones we're using in the material world. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Mother Geeta said, thanks. I would like to piggyback on her question and ask another question, and I have something else to share. And that is, so if the soul has senses, does it mean that because we are so much using our material imperfect senses that we are not able to connect with the soul that has the real spiritual sense? Is that what it is?
Srila Prabhupada answered this question, and this question was asked of him 3 times. 3 times in a row. When he mentioned this, it came to questions time, and so he had already said it once, and I'll get to the question itself because it connects to how you put the question. So I'll answer it how Srila Prabhupada answered it. He said that, yes, right now the senses in this material body are imperfect, they're contaminated. But the senses are part of the subtle body. The mind is connected to the senses. We say that because, of course, it's backed up in the Shastra. We're struggling in this world with the 6 senses, which includes the mind. The mind is the one that controls the senses. So when we talk about the subtle body, we're talking about the mind, which is the center and controller of the senses. So they're connected that way. Now, so Srila Prabhupada was explaining that when we purify this mind, intelligence automatically, when that's purified, then at that point, we are using the senses, although we see it as material, but the sense of the soul is now connected with us. And it was very difficult. And I'll just try to put it another way. What he's saying is, if we cleanse ourselves and become pure, then even though one person, let's take a pure devotee, even though we may not be pure devotees ourselves, but we know pure devotees, And Sri Prabhupada himself is one pure devotee. So, as on the outside, it seems that they're using the material senses. The soul senses are actually connected with it. So everything with the material senses, so everything they see and say and do involving the material senses are also consistent with what the senses of the soul do. And this was a big, big issue. And so I remember Mother Malati asked a question about it, and another person took it another. He said, "This is a recorded video that audio lecture that I heard this." So as long as we are in an impure state, the material senses that we have here are the ones that we're using in living, and the mind is the center, the controller of the senses. When the senses become purified, 100% purified, then even though we may see it as the material senses, it is actually working just like the soul's senses would work. That's another way of putting it. The perception is the same as the soul's perception, because now the person is 100% pure. And when we're not 100% pure, then we're connected with what makes us impure is material stuff. That's what makes us impure. And so if we're impure, then the senses are now connected with things that are material. But when we become pure, then even though the senses are part of our subtle body, they're acting at the level that the soul senses would act. Therefore, then the material senses are purified and they are acting like the soul will act. And that's just as far as we can go with that.
Makes complete sense.
It makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah,
Hare
yeah.
Krishna.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
The
Thank
Sri
you.
Prabhupada had
Really.
explained it 3 times though.
See, I'm sure it'll take us, at least me, like 10,000 times. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, see,
Yeah.
there is, and I'll give it another analogy. Krishna, let's say the time Krishna came to the material world, to this earth, he was acting, he was killing demons. From his birth, he was killing demons. Well, that was Krishna. And his incarnation is Lord Vishnu. But the scripture will tell you that those times when he was killing demons, that was Lord Vishnu that was acting.
Yeah.
Now, but we know the Lord Vishnu is four-handed. Krishna is two-handed, right? So
Yeah.
even from a physical standpoint, we see that. But then the scripture is telling us Krishna is not interested in himself doing that. In fact, he could use other energies to do that kind of work in dealing with the demons. But we saw on physical, at least what is said in the scriptures, it's describing that Krishna actually killed the demon. Krishna actually sucked the breast of Putana and killed him, sucked his life out of him. Krishna was one that brought Trinivata down. So those who were residents in Vrindavan, they were seeing Krishna do this. But the deeper aspect of it says that it is in fact Vishnu that does that kind of work. It's a little clearer to us when you say Mahavishnu is the one whose pores the universes come out of. Mahavishnu. Kabadaksaya Vishnu has function, Shivodaksaya Vishnu has function. But then in another part too of the scriptures, it tell you that they all merge into the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. They all merge into, they are all part of Krishna.
Yeah.
Therefore, the bigger picture is Krishna is responsible for everything.
Yeah.
That's why he says that everything material and spiritual, they all come from me. But then when you go into detail, there are incarnations of Krishna, according to his own will, that do certain types of work. So that's another analogy that relates to sometimes, it gets a little deeper, and that's as far as we can go with that, Hare Krishna.
No, thank you. Thank you. Very, very nice point. And another point that I wanted to share was, when Srila Prabhupada was speaking about, Sutta Goswami, where he had double association of great souls by hearing and preaching. I wanted to share that preaching is so important because your Prabhupada says, when you're sharing my books, you are actually giving mercy to the souls that are so lost, But I think at the same time, um, I was trying to relate to the point that, like for a first grader, if a first grader has learned something, it doesn't mean that
Mhm.
they go teach someone right away because they're still in first grade level. So I think the important point about preaching is, yes, preaching is very important, but I think we should be ready to preach until we are instructed by the spiritual master and senior devotees. That's what I was taught, and also, does our sadhana, because I was remembering Vaisheshika Prabhu's class on book distribution of
Mhm.
3-4 years ago, where he says the first uh, building block or the first law rule, sorry, of book distribution is sadhana. Without that, it's not going to work. So I think preaching is so important, but it's completely directly related to our sadhana and our devotional service. It's not that,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's one of my takeaways that I wanted to share, is how preaching is so important, but it's directly related to our chanting, our sadhana, our devotional service, our service attitude, everything. There's so much together. So that's one that I wanted to share, because I think all of it pleases the Lord, not just preaching. And then our service attitude is like, "Bleh." Our sadhana is so weak, then that doesn't please the Lord. Everything. So I just wanted to share that point that I was remembering from Vaisheshika Prabhu's class 4 years ago.
Thank you very much for sharing this. As Srila Prabhupada says, purity is the force. Purity is the force. How do we become, or how do we get more and more and more purified? By taking the process seriously. What is our process? Our sadhana. The sadhana. We take that seriously. The do's and don'ts in Krishna consciousness that we've been taught, our sadhana. If we take that seriously, then the force is greater. Sorry, the force becomes greater in that what we know and what we share has greater effect on the person that is hearing it. Now, it's not us. All we need to do from our part is to take our sadhana seriously, go after it enthusiastically, go after it like, it's a life or death situation, because actually it is. We don't think about it that way, but it is. Our death will be successful if our sadhana is serious, taken seriously. And with that, then we're able to effect more. When we speak, it has greater effect. It has greater effect. And this is the way Krishna has set it up. So it's for us. We just have to use our free will to say, I will take this seriously. Remember one point, again, made by my Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Maharaj. He said, he threw a challenge. He said, all devotees should think this way, that in this lifetime, dear Krishna, I want to get out. I want to get out of the material world. Now, I want to get out means everything that it takes for us to be able to earn the mercy of the Lord, that effort has to be put in by us. And the wonderful thing that connects with that is when we take it more seriously, then our sadhana improves and our purity improves. And now when we're able to talk about Krishna consciousness to anyone, we say it in a very convincing way, because they will feel that we are convinced ourselves about it. And through that, we can have a good service of changing people's minds, which is what Krishna likes very much. Preaching change people's minds from material to spiritual. Hare Krishna. Okay.
Yes, purity is the force, and that is the prerequisite, to devotional life.
Hare
Purity is
Krishna.
the force, because the more we work on that, then the more we are actually asking the Lord to remove what is blocking us from growing and getting out. Because there are lots of obstacles that we think we can hang on to, but we really can't, because that's going to be the blocking, the blocks to growing in spiritual life. So thank you for bringing it up. Thank you. We passed the 9 o'clock hour, and I want to respect everybody's time. Are there any other last minute questions, comments? Please do quickly jump in. And if there isn't, we thank you all for joining us. Just a humble reminder that we ask devotees that today is Prabhupada's disappearance day. We do a half-day fast, and then we break fast at noon, and we will have a celebration for Srila Prabhupada this evening at 6 o'clock. And it's really important that we be on time, because we have to go through the program and be around Prabhupada's Vyasa at 7:30, which is when he left the planet. So please, we just heard about making the extra effort, in our material lives for the sake of spiritual life. So please do make the extra effort. Let's all try to be at the temple before 6 p.m. so we can start at 6 p.m. and go to the program very nicely just in time. Until then, look forward to seeing everybody tonight for Srila Prabhupada's disappearance day. Vanchakaptibhyascha Kripasindabevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Shri
Hare
Prabhupada.
Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.